10, I think, by my watch. Looking for a clock in here, isn't the clock? Yeah. Oh, Gary agreed. It must be right. Oh yeah, you're right. It's up there. 10 to 9. It's 10:30 by my watch. We'll get cracking. We've got tons to get through on this. We may hear raucous noise and laughter, and oh no, you don't, because there's a pantomime, I think, going on at the moment. I know there have been literally busloads of school kids coming in and out on I don't know how many times a day basis, but it's quite fantastic, actually. I think it's quite marvellous, especially after the last few years when we haven't been able to have gatherings or pantomimes or any such things. I think it's nice that the kids can have a bit of pre-Christmas fun. So, apologies for absence. Let's kick off with that one. Do we have any?
Leader of apologies from Councillor Mark Stevenson, and his Deputy Councillor Baker is attending here today.
Welcome, Andy. Terry's not here, but he might be en route, I suppose. Okay, minutes of the last meeting we have before us. Can I sign those to an accurate record? Good, because I've already signed them. Well done. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Members are invited to declare any interests and the nature of them in relation to any item on the agenda. I will declare in advance that I am a director of Freeport East Limited, because moving swiftly into my next item, announcements by the council, I just wanted to mention that the Freeport East has now been incorporated. It is now formally set up as a limited company. We've got a full-time chief executive. We've got a chairman of the board appointed, and we are basically good to go, open for business. There's obviously still deals to be done and agreements to be made with government, etc. But it's looking very optimistic, and we're very confident about the future of the Freeport and the benefits that's going to have, obviously, in particular in Harwich, Barside, but for a much wider area, including that benefiting the whole of Tendring, if not the whole of the region. I also want to mention, and you'll be aware, because you should have had an email from me about devolution. The Leeson Chief Executives group met last week, and we are writing to government to seek an ambitious devolution deal for Greater Essex. So by Greater Essex, that's the 12 districts within the county council area, plus the 2 unitaries of Southend and Thurrock. You'll have heard last week that Norfolk and Suffolk have announced a devolution deal that's worth over £1 billion to them, and I think they're going for the directly elected leader model rather than a mayor. There are different options available. We haven't ruled anything in or ruled anything out, other than saying we want to be ambitious. This is for Essex. We see Essex as an entrepreneurial, ambitious, aspirational, successful place that we want to make even more vibrant, economically successful, prosperous, for the benefit of the residents. And it is all about the benefit of the residents. And Kevin Bentley, as leader of Essex County Council, I think deserves a lot of credit, because government have been absolutely clear on devolution, that they will take instructions from the upper tier authorities. That's the county council, it's the 2 unitaries, it isn't the districts. But Kevin has been absolutely clear right from the get-go. He wants to involve all the districts, and hence it was my signature on the letter that went to the 18 members of Parliament across Greater Essex, telling them what we're proposing to do, keeping them up to date, and inviting every councillor in the whole of the Greater Essex area. That's a heck of a lot of councillors. I'm not sure how many, to the training sessions we're putting on. Because he believes that we should, sort of democratise it. And I think the district councils in and across Essex have, got a reputation for speaking their minds and for, not being backwards and coming forward. So I think it's a sensible move on his part. It's a pragmatic move. It wouldn't be wise for him just to go ploughing on without knowing what the districts thought. Although at some time a decision does need to be made. And I think there are concerns people have about devolution. Does that mean local government reform? I got an email from Graham Steady last night saying, doesn't this mean local government reform? Well, no, it doesn't. It might mean that we might have local government reform, but the two things, strictly speaking, are completely unrelated. Devolution is devolution. Suffolk and Norfolk are getting devolution deals. There's no talk of any kind of local government reform taking place there because of that. And I don't think there has to be in Essex. But nevertheless, there are reasons to be against it. But also, from our residents' point of view, I think they're going to be asking us some tough searching questions if we didn't go for devolution, if we didn't say we want the powers, we want the money to be spent not in Westminster on our behalf, but here in Essex, by Essex people, for Essex people. I think they'd be asking some tough questions as to why we hadn't gone for that. So that's where we're at the moment. No decisions have been made. Such time as any decisions have to be made that commit this council in any way to anything that changes anything, then there'll be decisions going through the appropriate channels, probably to full council. But at the moment, a letter's gone in saying we're interested in having conversations about an ambitious devolution proposal, and that is basically it. Ian.
Just to say is that all members across Essex briefing dates are the 20th of December. One is at 6 p.m. I think the details have already gone out, but just for members in information. And the 21st of December at 11:30 a.m. And they're online, so all they are information, and they're being led by Tom Walker. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Carlo.
Chairman, I welcome that. We had a very good briefing. I think Councillor Henderson, Ivan, Paul was in attendance, and again Tom Walker was the officer who was leading on it. The one thing is very apparent. We all know that the model of local government as it stands, that was set up in 1974, it's no longer fit for purpose. It's the only way what the current offer is for councils to have more flexibility with finance is to go down that route. There is absolutely no way that this is going to be a local government reform as it has been regurgitated in the past. This is, for me, is the only way that we can sustain financially the turmoil that we're heading towards. And as I said, we find ourselves in a good place, but there are a lot of authorities around Essex which are not as well off as what we are. And but it's very much the way that Councillor Bentley has approached this, through the Essex leaders in a forum that everyone is represented, and there is no hidden agenda there. It's the right thing to do and the right way forward. And I think it's a really, really good way forward for everyone to follow.
Thanks for that, Carlo. I'll take Ivan.
Thank you. Well, I think everyone knows that right across party, Liberal Democrats and Labour, the Labour government, if there is a Labour government in 2024, they've already committed to devolution. So I think all parties are going down the same road, if not perhaps in different ways. I mean, the Labour devolution have already said that it needs streamlining compared to what's there now, because even devolution, which is being offered now, there's lots of hurdles to cross to actually get that devolution brought down to local level. I can give you an example. The area that I deal with, bus franchising, it's absolutely more or less impossible. It takes years to get through. They say you can have control of your transport systems and everything else, but it takes years to actually go through all those hurdles that cost huge amounts of money, legal costs. So the whole situation does need to be streamlined. If the governments really mean devolution, then they should actually make it easier. But I think what we ought to be careful of, and obviously, Neil, you're in these discussions, what we ought to be careful of is, I saw the comments from David Ellesmere from Ipswich Borough Council, when he said that the Suffolk deal looks very good, all very good. They, for example, 480 million for infrastructure, but that's over 30 years. That works out at 16 million a year. So when you actually break it down, 16 million infrastructure for a massive area, it's not a lot. So these big wads of money, big windfalls that the government's talking about, they need to be broken down to see how realistically they are and what we can actually deliver with them, because that all sounds very, very good, but we need to make sure we can do something with that money when it comes down. And I saw the leader of Suffolk Council, his comments, because they've rejected the idea of the mayoral option. And what he said, it just brings in more bureaucracy. And I think whatever deal we're looking at, it's about building communities, not building empires. I said this at County Council. Councillors who are involved, it's not about who's going to be mayor or what I'm going to get out of this deal myself. exactly what's being said. It should be what the residents and what our communities are going to get out of it, rather than building individuals' empires. The question I would ask, Neil, is I understand your one of your responsibilities is communications and engagement. I do think that's a pity, because respectful to our councillors, we have got a devolution meeting coming up, but that's with all other councils. We've never had. You've been in these discussions since June with all other leaders and Essex County Council. I've already had 2 meetings with Kevin Bentley. I had another one yesterday with all leaders, but we have never had a statement on whatever's being looked at. Now, we can talk about a members' briefing where devolution was discussed in line with the levelling up bill, but there was no mention within that members' briefing that these discussions had already been taken last June, or you were leading on them. So I do think our members should be entitled to have their own briefing, and you can actually then seek our own members' views rather than going off since June without any discussion or any feedback from any member on this council. That's my only criticism of this system. We are all going down that road, and like I said, it is cross-party. It is the right thing to do for the future, but I think there needs to be more communication and respect given to our councillors within this district.
But I take your point, but I think there hasn't been, apart from the fact we're having conversations about devolution, there hasn't actually been anything tangible or physical and frankly, there isn't really now, because all I'm really saying is that we've agreed to write a letter. We haven't agreed what the letter is yet. There's going to be another meeting to discuss what the letter actually says. We've agreed that we want to put forward a letter that asks for an ambitious deal, but that letter itself has yet to be crafted. So it's a very sort of chicken and egg type situation. I appreciate what you're saying. I know that Kevin briefed county members the day before we had the leaders and chief execs meetings to give them the kind of heads up, because he knew a lot of them were dual mandated and they would be hearing it from the districts. But and then the idea was that we should be talking, all districts should be briefed with the same message at roughly the same time. Hence, we've got these Pan-Essex sessions coming up next week. The danger is that people sort of put a slightly different slant on the message, and it goes out slightly differently in one district to another district, and then people sort of get a slightly distorted view of the reality of what the situation is or isn't. The point about the money, and you're right, I made the exact point about the fact it's over 30 years, the funding, but apparently it's guaranteed government funding, so you can borrow against it. You can run major projects based on the fact you've definitely got that money coming in. And we actually had at the Essex Chief Execs, we had the directly elected mayor of Tees Valley, Ben Houchin, on the call, and he was explaining what a directly elected mayor, what his position is and what it isn't, and what decisions he can make and what he can't make. And he doesn't have the sort of the free rein just to go running around with a big fat checkbook, as you might think some of these directly elected mayors do. He's answerable to his combined authority. The combined authority basically has all the leaders of the councils within his geographical area, and they can veto projects and proposals. So there's a sort of balancing thing there. So there's an awful lot of detail like that, Ivan, that needs to be teased out and discussed, and people, yeah, I accept your point, they need to be briefed on it, but at the moment, notwithstanding the white paper that came out with the proposals, we don't have anything further to report concrete, because there's no actual bid has gone into government yet. But as it does, certainly we will do that. And you're right, I was going to mention the fact I heard Keir Starmer on the television saying that Labour are committed to devolution. I think it is good, it is important. What's interesting, I heard Lisa Nandy speak at the Local Government Association conference back in the summer as Labour's local government representative, and I have to say she's really good. And I really liked her because she was frank and honest and open in a way that, frankly, some people in that position aren't always. And she said, and that's what I quite admired about her, actually, she said that all oppositions talk about devolving power to local communities, but as soon as they get into government, they sort of seem to retract from it a little bit. And that isn't a party political observation. That's just a sort of a fact of life, really, isn't it? Turkey's not voting for Christmas. You know, they're all for Christmas until they realise what Christmas means for them, sort of thing. And you know, and then you've hit the nail on the head there, a little bit, I think, because you know, we don't want to be creating fiefdoms. I can't remember the word you used. We don't want to be creating power bases. We want to be delivering for residents. And, you know, when any kind of local government reform, any kind of change to how we do things that's different to what we're doing now, and everyone tends to look at what does that mean for me? Will I lose my seat? Will I lose my position on this board or that panel or that committee or that cabinet? And we do all need to look at something much bigger than ourselves and just imagine we're not in this, but what's good for the people that we represent? What's good for the wider area? What's good for our ward? What's good for this district? What's good for this county? What's good for this whole area? I mentioned about Freeport earlier, and that's going to have obvious benefits in the direct area, but the sort of the ripples of that stone hitting the pond in Barside Bay, metaphorically speaking, will ripple out and have massive impacts everywhere. And it's going to be very, very difficult, to the point of being impossible, to really calculate those benefits, but they will be felt. And it's the same sort of thing with this. It's like, yeah, we may personally not like it because it may mean that maybe our, you know, so there's some change to our position within a council or some committee or board we sit on, but that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. And we need to look at the bigger picture. So that's going to be a challenge for us. But I will move on if that's all right, unless anyone else wanted to speak on that item, but we've had a good discussion, I think. Thanks for your comments, Ivan. Anyway, I did appreciate them. The first item I've got then is item 6, which is Green Space Development Petition, Holland Haven, on page 15. We've got a petition from Sharon Tyler. I understand that she is not available today, but Colin, you're going to speak on her behalf. Yeah,
I've got a speech if I may read it, please. We, the petitioners, object to Tendring District Council's plan to self-develop the parcel of green space known as Haven Gardens and Manor Way, the Gap. First and most importantly, should the Cabinet decide to forge ahead with these proposals, it would be an infringement of residents' legal rights. The proposal for the development or sale of land without outline planning permission of the parcels of open green space is intrinsically flawed, as the proposal is based on inaccurate information. Appendix A and B attached highlights the formalities, but these are also summarised below. The land assessment matrix states there is no rights over the land. Residents' deeds clearly state the opposite. Please see examples marked as Appendix E and F. The matrix stands there is none. This is incorrect. The Haven area is known for hedgehog, badgers, deer, rabbits, bees, birds, to name a few. The matrix states there are none. However, there are, as highlighted on Appendix A and C. The matrix states there are none. There is one pinnacle of Haven Gardens where Haven Avenue and the Esplanade converge, as highlighted on Appendix A. Along the Haven Avenue side of Haven Gardens, a yellow pipe protrudes, which is suggestive of gas or utility supply. The area from Manor Way into the Gap onto the Esplanade. The matrix states there are none. However, there are, as highlighted on B and D. The matrix states there is none. This is incorrect. The Haven area is known for hedgehog, badgers, rabbits, bees, birds, to name a few. The matrix incorrectly states there is no parking. As noted on Appendix B, there is a blue badge holding parking allowable. We, the petitioners, object to Tendring District Council's plan to self-develop the parts of green space known as Haven Gardens, Manor Way, the Gap. First and most importantly, should the Cabinet decide to forge ahead with these proposals, it will be an infringement of residents' legal rights. The proposal for development or sale of the land with outline planning permission of the parcels of open green space is intrinsically flawed, as the proposal is based on inaccurate information, Appendix A and B, attached to highlights to these formalities, but these are also summarised below. Haven Gardens. The land assessment matrix states there is no right over the land. Residents' deeds clearly state the opposite. See examples marked as Appendix E and F. Haven Gardens. The metric states there is none. This is incorrect. The Haven area is known for hedgehog, bagsteers, rabbits, bees, birds, to name a few. The metric states there are none, however they are highlighted in A and C. The metric states there are none. There's one at the pinnacle of Haven Gardens, and that land column, where Haven Avenue and the Esplanade converge, as highlighted in Appendix A, underground cables. Along the Haven Avenue side of Haven, a yellow pipe introduces with gas or other utility supply. And I think at the end, you've got a copy of one of their deeds. So do you want me to read that? I'll read it. Yeah. And this is a copy of a deed and buildings erected thereon. In further pursuit of the said agreements, gratuity and the mortgage for themselves and their successors is tightly hereby convenient with the grantee, and to the intent that such conveyance shall endure for the benefit only of the grantee, but also for the benefit of the owner or owners of the time being of the said land coloured blue on the said plan, said land coloured pink and green on the said plan, shall forever hereafter reopen land for the benefit of the owners or occupiers for the time being of land now forming part of the said Queenscliff estate, including the said land coloured blue on the said plan, and that no buildings, erections or trees shall be built, erected, grown or placed or upon the said land coloured pink and green on the said plan which shall be in any way interfere with or affect the view of the sea from the said land coloured blue on the said or any building or buildings to be erected thereon. That said, the piece of land whom the said plan marked to reserve for garden, excuse me, shall forever remain unbuilt upon, and that nothing shall be grown thereon or interrupt in a way or interfere with the view over the sea from the piece of land hereby. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would like to thank Councillor Winfield and the petitioner for submitting the petition. While we note the contents of it and the request for us to do nothing with the site, I'd just like to stress that no proposals have yet to be formulated. The current position is that Cabinet back in July agreed the initiation of property dealing procedure for the whole of the 69 sites that we presented. And as I reported in July, this was done in the spirit of transparency and inclusion, and to cover what was a huge piece of work that had been done by officers. This has probably been the most comprehensive piece of work that the property team has ever undertaken. And I'm very grateful for the officers for the time that they put into this, and it was work that spanned over about 2.5 years, and every single site had been scored, evaluated, and with its potential uses for it. The council has duty and responsibility to maximise its assets, and having identified the sites and potential use for them is very much part of that duty and responsibility. As and when officers will be in a position to consider the uses of these sites further, then another report will be presented here at Cabinet to at a particular time to progress or not any potential proposals. And I would also like to remind everyone that there'll be a chance to voice people's opinion as and when this proposal come through the normal process of consultation that's been put in place for a long time, and we will be as inclusive as possibly can. With regards to the action from Cabinet today, I would like to propose that Cabinet notes the petition, thanks the petitioner, and request that these views and others are taken into account as and when the property dealing procedures unfolds, subject to available resources. Chairman, so move.
Well done. Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Just to support what Councillor Guglielmi has just put across there, and to really reiterate, if you look at the portfolio holder comments on the bottom of page 19, you'll see very clearly one part says that no decision has yet been taken to build or dispose of any land. This is one piece of land among 69 that as a council we're looking at. We have a duty to do that. This is land owned by the council, so effectively in public ownership, and if we're not making best use of that land for the benefit of our people, and we should be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that anything will happen to it at all. So just to reiterate, there are no plans to build there. There's nothing coming up at the moment. Maybe there will be in future. I don't know. If there are ever plans come forward, they will need to go through the planning process, just like everything else has to go through the planning process. And if that's the case, then everybody will be aware, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to deal with that. But at this moment, whilst I think the petition is really good and well written and well put together, and I thank the petitioner for that, and contains some information that perhaps we can look at going forward, which is useful. It is perhaps a little premature in that there are no plans at the moment to do anything with that piece of land, so it's a little premature in its position. So I'm happy to second the proposal by Councillor Guglielmi. Thank you.
I just wanted to support Councillor Guglielmi on this, to be honest, because I think putting that piece of work out there, making it so transparent so that it's not things that are definitely happening, it's just looking at everything and, you know, identifying what could be done in the future. I think it's, you know, I'm a big advocate of putting everything out there in a totally transparent way. And actually, there are places on there which, you know, I know which could do with being developed because there's problems with them. So, yeah, it's a great piece of work, and I totally support Councillor Guglielmi on it.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if I should declare an interest because I'm a resident of Holland-on-Sea, but the actual area that's in the petition is far enough away from my house. I don't think I need to. As I said at the meeting back in July when this came to Cabinet, it caused me concern. It still does, but I'm reassured by Councillor Guglielmi's comments that no decisions have yet been made, and people have got the chance to make their comments, and a number have. And as a not only as a resident, but obviously a member of the Holland Resident Association, they have written in to both of you with their concerns, and I have as a ward councillor for a bit in my ward. I think the problem that I've seen from when it first started, people just didn't understand how we necessarily work, and obviously, you know, to make any decision on anything that we own or have, there has to be a procedure, and people didn't see that. What they saw was, you're going to build on a bit of grass next to my house, and I think we have to make sure that we reassure people that no decisions have been made, and if decisions are made about each individual site, as you said, Carlo, that it would be on an individual basis, that people will have the chance to put their thoughts forward and their concerns forward. And I would just reiterate that every single site in Holland-on-Sea is protected under our local plan. They are safeguarded open spaces. So what I don't want to see, I don't want to see them built on, I don't want to see them developed, and I don't want to see them sold because I think they're valuable. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, to make sure that we are getting the best out of them. Now, some of those bits of land, the best out of them is leaving them exactly as they are. for some of them, getting the best out of them is building 3 houses on them, or 2 houses, or whatever. There are bits of land, for example, that are sort of overgrown, derelict, that people are screaming out, can you not sort of tidy that up and clear it up and put a nice little house on it, really improve it? Every single one of those 69 bits of 69, every single one is different, and every single one will be treated differently. We're not applying any kind of blanket policy to those. We were really quite clear that we are not looking to pick a fight with anyone. If local residents say, no, we don't want you to do that, we are going to listen. That's, I think, really important. We don't have some plan to steamroller through and just build as many houses or concrete as much of it as we can. They're absolutely not. It's just about making sure we are doing the best with the bits of land that we've got. And if there are restrictions in place, such as have been talked about with this bit of land, then that restricts what we can do at any rate. So, and as I say, it may well be that the best use for that land is what it's currently being used for, or not being used for, if you get what I'm saying. Anyway, Gary was next.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I welcome all the comments from councillors. I think we need to be a little bit clearer, because town and parish council, especially in my area, are a bit concerned. Councillor Scott, we weren't aware of a piece of land proposal for 4 houses, and I said these are not plans. These are called like a bit of work to look at all their assets across the district, the pieces of land. So some parish and town councils were a little bit alarmed. Perhaps if that, and when it goes through the next stage in the future, perhaps inform town and parish councils that we're going to look at pieces of land, not necessarily we're going to sell the pieces of land, we're just looking at pieces of land for the district, because it did brought a lot of concern in Elmstead and Bromley and places like that. People were concerned about pieces of land. Thank you.
In the unparished areas, I beg your pardon, Michael, I was just saying that town and parish councils across tendering and across all of Essex, I'm sure, are normally quite quick to come forward and let us know if they think we've got something wrong or they're not sure about something. I think in the unparished areas, obviously you don't have that extra layer of government, so a bit more challenging. But Carlo, can you come back?
Yeah, Chairman, yeah, just to wrap up this item, as I did say, the council has got a duty to maximise its assets. The position that we find ourselves in and many other authorities are, we've got to maximise what we've got, basically. You know, we got a huge funding gap, and the previous discussion on devolution touched on the way of kind of tackling the shortfall of in funding and in balancing a budget. So therefore, there might be some decision that might not be met with total support, but just to the reason why this piece of work was done. We agreed that housing strategy some 2-3 years ago now, and the best way for the council to deliver on that strategy is to identify developable pieces of land which would be financially sustainable. You know, to build a house on a plot and to build 10 houses on a plot somewhere else, it's a huge difference, because the cost of mobilising equipment and manpower is more or less the same for 10 as for 1. So therefore, one of the major reasons behind this, well before Councillor Placey puts this motion forward in 2020, when she identified 3 plots of land that they could be built on. Well, to be honest, the plot of land she identified, they were not sustainable. You know, it was, one was enough for 1 house, one was enough for 2 houses, and the other one was enough for about 3 or 4 houses, which were completely detached from elsewhere. So therefore, this piece of work was already ongoing when that motion came forward. So for us, for the council to address its financial shortfall that we have, you know, it's important that this work is now underway, and there will be decisions that will not be very popular with people, but we're not there yet. So therefore, I think I was very clear when we opened this item. I could have taken each plot individually as an individual decision, and that would have probably gone under the radar of many people. But we decided not to do that. We decided to be as open and transparent as possibly could, and the whole offer was presented as a whole thing. So therefore, I just really wanted to, just a word of warning that there might be some decisions that, not in this administration, of course, because this work is ongoing and will progress for a long while yet. But just to remind members of the financial position we find ourselves in. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Carlo. So, Colin.
Just a quick question. How long does a petition last?
forever. I mean, it exists, will be kept in the records forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you.
And we've incorporated in the motion that's been moved and seconded, that we consider, we take into account the comments made basically on the petition in any future discussions on that piece of land and others. So on that, are we all happy to agree the motion that was moved and seconded? That's unanimous. Thank you. Well done. Thank you, Colin, for taking the time to read that on behalf of Sharon. If you could thank Sharon on behalf of Cabinet, thank you. The next item 9 is A2 on your agenda, page 23, which is in Carlo's hands.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. The report I'm presenting today represents the work of the Constitution Review Working Group, which is met on 3 different occasions. This is for Cabinet to agree today, so that it can be presented for Council in January. If I may, Chairman, I'd just like to summarise some of the what's been proposed in very short summary. To start is the start delay of a meeting, if not quorate, the printed text of questions by members when they're printed in the agenda, proposing complete new procedure to deal with motions, and on that, Chairman, we are planning to set up a workshop, because this is going to represent a major departure in the way that we deal with motions, and I'm very grateful for officers who have gone with a blank sheet of paper. So there will be a date announced where all members will be invited to take part to understand what the new procedure is, because reading it off a book and actually putting it in practice is completely different. So we will be doing that, sending a date very near future. The ability to vote, if not present for the whole meeting. The contents of the minutes recorded, especially for planning. Planning applications submitted by officers and members of the councils, the appointment of substitute members on the planning committee and other committees, if there's a shortage of one single group, the attendance and the right to speak on planning or the planning portfolio, the meetings, the review of local choice inclusions, verification of term of reference of the community leadership of review scrutiny committee, the right for members to attend cabinet and committee whenever they submit the motions, so that they will have a right to speak, the definitions of key decisions, terms of reference change for the licensing, terms of reference change to refer planning application to committee from 28 days to 35, overview scrutiny procedure rules around task and finish group, the remit of the community leadership committee, the question put forward, and also to up the limits of property dealing from 100,000 to 300,000. There is a section that deals with officers' financial property dealing procedure rules, manner change on petitions in how they are submitted electronically, reasons for more clear reason to refer a planning application to committee. And finally, there's a site visit review, which is not part of the report today, Chairman, as we are, I think we're just about ended a survey from members, and that will be a standalone item at the March meeting. So all the proposed changing are tracked in red between pages 37 to 132. As I said, the workshop date will be announced in the coming days from all members to acquaint themselves with the new procedure for motions. Recommendation B, Chairman, it talks about the monitoring officer advice to of the use of minutes which are printed in the council agenda. Very often these minutes are used to raise issues which are no longer relevant to the business of the to be transacted that particular night. So we are still going to be looking whether they should appear in the council agenda or not, but I think we should give strong regards to the monitoring officer advice that the minutes should not be used to resurrect issues which have been previously discussed. And there will be just the final recommendation D, that the Constitutional Review will meet again to one more time to consider the site visit. So, and I so move, Chairman.
Thank you, Carlo.
Second that.
Second that. Hello, Terry. I looked up and you're suddenly there. It's like woof, woof, when he appeared. Didn't see.
My apologies for absence. What did they say? Trouble at Ranch, sir.
Yeah. Say no more. No, it's good to see you, Ivan.
Yeah, just on the last point, Carla, it'd be good if you could just give us a clearer view of the last point you made about committee minutes appearing in the council agenda. That doesn't stop us or councillors asking the chairman for clarification of an issue. I think we were talking about previous minutes, weren't we? Referring to previous minutes of meetings, just to clear. But overall, can I say, myself and my deputy, Councillor Maria Fowler, have been involved in these discussions and in previous discussions, and I've found the working party to be, under your chairmanship, to be of really good value and use, and we've come out of it in a very good working relationship. However, on this occasion, I've got to say, unless we can withdraw one part of these suggestions out, my group will not be supporting these constitutional changes, because in the past we've actually had discussions within the working party, and we've gone away and sometimes gone back to our groups. And I can give an example for yourself, Carlo, where you took the issue away about changing the structure and the amount of committees we had, and you took it to your group and you came back and that didn't change because your group had some concerns with it. There's a change in here that it's been done without going through that working party. No discussion, no debate, no consideration. Just gone to an informal cabinet.
Well, what's the change, Ivan?
It's the one on motions. It's motion scope of motions 12.1 and procedure rule 14, where the wording's been, there's been some wording added on what you can and can't discuss within those motions. Now they might be, to me there's a principle here, and what we call custom and practice. Custom and practice has been that we agree things within the working party, and if we've got concerns, we take them back to the working party and go through it, and then it comes out with agreement. I think it's just wrong how this has been done, and I don't accept the issue that it's got to be rushed in before March or whatever because of the situation of elections coming up and everyone being very busy, because these changes could be done during the next administration. They're not urgent. We don't have that many motions that should be put forward at our full council. So I can't see what the rush is. So I would hope we support all the other changes, but it would be a shame to actually vote against those changes if that part stays within.
And sorry, it was 12.1, and what was the other one?
Procedure rule 12 on motions. There's been changes to procedure rule 12, and there's been changes to procedure rule 14 on motions not permitted.
Yeah, I'll ask Lisa to clarify on that.
Thank you, Chairman. In response to Councillor Ivan Henderson's point, just for clarification, the words that Councillor Henderson is referring to is, if you look at page 51 of your agenda, 12.1, the words which were suggested to be inserted following the meeting of informal cabinet were, sorry, Can you not hear me? My stroke. Okay. Is that better? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I was sort of leaning into it, wasn't speaking very well. Sorry. I'll start again. The words are on page 51, 12.1, and the words that were suggested to be inserted following the meeting of informal cabinet were which could reasonably considered to affect the residents of the district. Those were the additional words that were proposed. The Constitution Working Party did not meet again, as Councillor Henderson has informed. However, the wording was sent round to all of the members of the Constitution Working Party, and their comments were invited. And we have, as officers as well, been in correspondence with a couple of other things that were picked up as typos and wording that didn't quite make sense. So there has been other clarifications made, and I just wanted to make it quite clear that the Constitution Working Party, when it wasn't that they were not notified of the wording and they were given the opportunity to comment, which is also custom and practice. Thank you.
When Carlo presented this to Cabinet, I brought up the issue of 12.1 in particular, which I think led on to 14A, the other one. So it's the same issue basically, and it was just a question of I felt there was some ambiguity. I can't remember exactly how the wording was previously, and then that's been looked at and tidied up. As far as I'm aware, the meaning of what was originally proposed to be changed, the sort of the principle of what wanted to be changed there, has actually been tightened up by the changes, which then, as Lee said, were then fed back to the Constitution Work Group. But ultimately, it is Carlo's group. But yeah, so when it got to Cabinet, as you would expect, I suppose, there's been a tiny little tweak out of a massive document. So I think we haven't done badly, really, when you think of how many changes there are and how in particular, the whole the whole item on moving motions is completely rewritten from scratch. So it actually makes it quite difficult to go through and appreciate the changes because the entire thing has changed. You have to kind of read them side by side. Carlo, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, Chairman, I think that's the very good summary of why the change come about. That's why I'm very keen to hold a workshop, because this is a major departure on the way we deal with motions, and it needs to be worked. And when we introduced changes previously to motions, it was work in progress, wasn't it? It was we knew what we wanted to achieve from it, but it wasn't quite delivering what we all felt it should do. So therefore, on this one, we've kind of started from scratch, and it's like blank canvas. And I agree with Ivan. I don't think there's any major rush to do this. I would suggest that we hold a workshop, we work with it for a while, so everybody gets to understand and there might be other comments that come forward. I think this the scope of the Constitution Review Working Group so far has worked extremely well, because it's been very inclusive. We've delivered, we tried to deliver what everybody's views has been and taken into consideration that. But on this particular one, I'm more than happy to pause it until we have a workshop, Chairman, and then we can review the whole thing after people have worked with it. So I'm happy to hold off on the motions and push everything else through, and then it'll be an ongoing conversation. The committee has still got the working group has still got to meet anyway to debate the site visits. So that's unlikely that's going to come to January. So that will be deferred to the March meeting. So,
I think what's important here, and I think to be fair to Ivan, that is kind of what you were saying in your preamble, is that the Constitution is actually more powerful when everyone supports it and feels they own it, rather than it being imposed upon them. I know there's a great saying that I like to quote quite often, that rules are for the guidance of wise men and the strict adherence of fools. but we all need a constitution. We do all need some sort of canvas, but it really helps. And Carlo's hit the nail on the head there. If we understand what it is we're trying to achieve from these changes, first and foremost, you then have a better understanding of, well, does that achieve that? And your understanding of whether it does might be different to mine. And anyway, who cares if Lisa has a totally different view to that as the monitoring officer? So it is important that ideally, it's important that we all agree, quite frankly, that there is general consensus. The constitutional changes absolutely shouldn't be political in any way. They should be about the council running more smoothly, seamlessly, and ideally, so we don't need to have our constitution sitting on our desk as we sit at council meetings or committee meetings, or next to our computer at home whilst we're sort of considering what we're going to do as councillors. It should be there on the shelf gathering dust to be drawn down in emergencies. Yeah, go on.
Can I? And I welcome that, and I welcome the comments. I also sit on the Constitutional Working Party for Essex County Council, and we have the same working relationship. There's very rarely, you'll know, Carlo, there's very rarely that we have disagreement within when they go through. So it'd be unfortunate if we started. Can I clarify on the comments of the monitoring officer? I did make it clear when that came out. I did email in and say that I wasn't happy with the process that had taken place. I know other members may not have, but I did, on behalf of my group, make it very clear.
Andy, and then Terry.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, because of Councillor Stevenson's commitments, he asked me to sit on the working party, and I actually enjoyed it. I mean, it's funny for a councillor to say they actually enjoy council work, but it was an eye opener for me because I've never done it before, and under Carlo's chairmanship, it was very frank and open conversations, and everything was on the table. We can disagree as much as we like about anything, but if you can have a frank and open discussion about how we can get to the end and come up with something that is acceptable to everyone, is actually quite remarkable, really, because we're all different. I've spoken to Mark before today. We're quite happy with all the changes. Obviously, I can't speak for the rest of our group. Obviously, they will get the opportunity to speak at the whatever's coming, or at full council when it comes up for full debate, and that's when everybody can have their say. I would like to see it in before the next administration, personally, because I think then whoever comes after us, whether some of us are here, some of us aren't, or there's 48 completely new councillors who'll be going, oh dear, what's happening? They will know exactly where they stand with the Constitution. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Andy. And I'll bring Terry in at this point. Did you want to speak, Terry?
Just, I think Carlo's answered my question, if you're going to pause that. And again, as one of the original authors, along with Michael, of the original Constitution, I feel it's sort of slowly disappearing into this. But as I say, all I can say, the foundation was there, and hopefully it grows better and stronger as it goes on, but more inclusive for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Alex. What was it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite interesting actually, because I mean, we had a massively long discussion in Cabinet about this and went over it in detail, and we were sort of looking at all of the wording and with officers, and some slightly different wording has come out of it. Obviously, I know you're not happy with that wording, but what I find what's quite good about this is the fact that everybody is getting a say in it, and we're getting the whole process is transparent, and you're going to defer it to go over it again. So I think just to comment on the whole process, I like the way we're doing it. I like the fact that you're able to put the input, the working party is, Cabinet is, everybody's able to put their input, and then in a public meeting where the whole thing's transparent. And I think this is the way things should be dealt with, just as a a general comment about what we're doing. So I think it's all good.
Yeah, I think it's credit to the council, because there's an awful lot of authorities where you couldn't have conversations like that. The challenge here, coming back to what Andy said actually about how well it works at the Constitution Working Group, you then have and Ivan was alluding to this, you then go back to your respective political groups. And people go, "You're going to do what? You're going to change that?" And you know, and I was the one on this occasion saying, "Hang on, what's that?" You know, on that particular point, that because you're coming at it from a slightly different perspective because you weren't there, you know, at the ground floor as the foundations were being put in of the new structure kind of thing. So it does need sort of clever explanation and I think an understanding really of why the changes have been proposed. For me, that really made a massive difference when I understood why the changes were being proposed on individual things. You know, oh, I see, got you right in that case. Although it did still what changed, but you moved to recommend the recommendation as printed. Did you want to say something on that, Lisa? Go
on. Members, I was just going to suggest, following the discussion that you've had, that recommendation A on your agenda on page 23, if you added the additional wording with the exception of the proposed changes to council procedure rule on motions number 12 and 14, so that they are obviously taken out at this stage, but the rest goes forward.
Thank you for that, Lisa. Appreciate the clarity. You're happy to agree that. I'm happy to second that. We all agree. So that's been agreed. Thank you, everyone, for your engagement on that item. Okay, next item of business is page 10, and that is the updated general fund financial forecast. Tyler.
Yes, Chairman, thank you very much. If you can bear with me, I got not hugely long speech, but it's quite important that we pick up the highlights of our general fund financial forecast, which includes budget changes for 22-23 and with budget proposed for 23-24. The report that we have in front of us today builds the position that we considered at the meeting back in on the 4th of November. There's only been a limited number of changes, but as indicated previously, the position is more positive now than for 23-24. Having said that, the scale of the ongoing savings we need to find over the next couple of years has not changed. The current savings forecast in excess of £5 million over 24-25 and 25-26. As set out in Appendix A on page 151-156, we have a little bit of funding headroom for 23-24 in terms of one-off money we have identified to date to balance the budget. However, we are likely to see more changes to the budget over the coming weeks. And so with this in mind, it would be pragmatic to wait for these to play out before we make any further decision on the current bottom line position. In terms of potential changes, the government have already recently published a policy statement, getting out some key messages ahead of the more detailed local government finance settlement, which normally comes a couple of days before Christmas. Some positive highlights from this policy statement include the revenue support grant will increase in line with CPI, whatever our share will be, and that's the devil's in the details. This is very positive news. We have not been expecting any revenue support grant, let alone an inflationary uplift. The government will be freezing the business rate multiplier in 23-24 and will be compensating local authorities accordingly. We have built in a general 3% inflationary rise, which hopefully is at least the level that will be compensated by government. Again, we'll wait and see what the detail is. The council tax increase threshold has been confirmed at 3% or £5, whichever the greater. As we know, we've used the £5 increase for the last few years. The updated forecast includes the 3% increase as proposed. The new home bonus has been reconfirmed that continue in 23-24. And with the same policy statement, the government included the following statement, and I quote, "The government notes the significant increase in some local authorities' reserves over the 2 years of the pandemic. We encourage local authorities to consider how they can use the reserves to maintain services in the face of immediate inflationary pressures, taking account, of course, of the need to maintain appropriate levels of reserves to support the council financial stability and future investment." Chairman, we're doing just that to help maintain services in response on the short-term financial challenges we face, and the review of the reserves that in Appendix A, it supports just that. Although government support is welcome, it's unlikely to provide a longer term and ongoing solution our budget challenges, especially given the government's previous commitment to ceasing revenue support grant in addition to business rate retention reforms. We must therefore continue to hold our destiny in our own hands and continue to identify the necessary savings to support our ongoing financial sustainability. This is the only way we can guarantee to be able to provide important services to our residents and businesses long into the future. In terms of the more detailed local government financial settlement, again, we expect some announcements from government next week. We will keep members in the loop and update the forecast accordingly. In terms of more specific government funding, the report sets out some more good news. And you'll be surprised to think that it's Christmas coming. Not only has the council been awarded funding under the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we have been allocated further funding as part of the rural grant funding element of the same scheme, which that's been included in the recommendation on page 134, that we do accept the council's part of the Shared Prosperity Fund as outlined in recommendation C. Subject to the associated decision, we'll need to respond to the government by the close of play today by signing and returning our memorandum of understanding to confirm just that. Given a tight time scale, we'll need to seek the necessary approval from the chairman of the Review Scrutiny Committee to accept the decision from Colin. Councillor Stevenson is already aware of this request and it's certainly something that he's happy to support. In talking about Councillor Stevenson and the Resource and Service of Review Scrutiny Committee, he provides a nice link into saying that I'll thank the committee in advance of the budget scrutiny work normally undertaken in January, and I look forward to receiving the comments in due course. Chairman, I'm very happy to move the recommendation on page 134. And just for members' information, the combined total of the Shared Prosperity Fund is just over 1.7 million.
Yeah, 134. Yeah, second that motion. Any comments?
Yeah, I think the problem is with this. It sounds good news now, but as we all saw, the Chancellor was putting the cuts to public spending back a few years, so it still could be round the corner if things don't improve. I see the increase in council tax 3%, and that doesn't seem a lot, but when you know that's not the end of the story, because we're going to have Essex County Council share, and you're going to have the precept fire and police and fire commissioners precept, and when we hear the interest rates have just gone up again yesterday for people with mortgages, we know how tough it is out there. So the littlest amount at the moment means an awful lot to people who are struggling to make ends meet on a week-to-week basis. So any increase is not going to be welcome, although I understand the reasons why, because we've still got to run our services, and we've had those cuts over the years from governments on millions of pounds which have been taken away from us. So things are better, but not as good as we would like them to be, as you've mentioned, Carlo. Just a couple of questions from the report. I see that there's 106, and there's in 2.4 million in Section 106 agreements. Now, I know as a councillor in my area, and I'm sure other councillors do, we've got projects outstanding in open space areas. So I just wonder why we are sitting on 2.4 million when there are projects that could be completed and finished around our own wards. And on the cost pressures, Appendix A, I just wondered if we could have an explanation on, it's got new Careline £100,000 2023-24, what that in detail what that means. And on the care line situation, are we going to maintain the existing services where we're providing the lifting service, which we introduced as part of the payment for those services? On page 145, it's got local retained business rates. And there's a comment there, and Neil referred to the Freeports earlier today. There's been no change associated with the creation of Freeports at present, which is obviously about retention of business rates. I just wondered if when we can expect that changes. Neil, you said prospects look very bright. I just wonder when we're going to see any of that money materialise within our district. And it also goes on to say necessary changes associated with the creation of Freeports will be set out. I just wonder what those changes are being referred to, and what will be set out in the future. And I just further would like to ask, what is our actual borrowing at the moment, our total amount that we're borrowing, and how much is that costing us per a year? I know Essex County Councils is eye-watering, and I know if we get devolution, we've got an opportunity to borrow on those big figures. But if you're already borrowing a fair bit, I'd be interested to see what they are. And finally, could I give a thank you on behalf of my group to the S151 officer for the time that he gave us to go through all of the documents and explain as much as he possibly can to us and make it as understandable as you possibly can when you're going through some of these budgets. So we appreciate the time that we had from the officer. It was really useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan. There's a lot of questions there. I'm going to get Ian to answer a bit about borrowing. I'm going to answer a little bit about Freeport, and I'll come back to Carlo for the substantive kind of response, if you like. But on Freeports, and actually apologies because I meant to say at the beginning, I mentioned that we've incorporated Freeports. I forgot to mention, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to come back on it, that I'm in conversations with Lee about setting up a meeting of the working group sometime in the new year, in January, to discuss exactly those issues that you've just raised, basically, and what the options are and what that looks like going forward, because we are getting to that stage now. Ian.
Just to technical answer, the question of how much borrowing we've got is 144,000 for our revenue budget. Obviously, HRA has the housing one, which is the ongoing around the purchase of the housing, which was over some time. But our actual borrowing in terms of you're talking about the revenue side, is 144,000.
Thanks for that, Carlo.
Yes, Chair. The money sitting 106 is a transitionary amount, and there is a section of the open space team that will be more than happy to discuss any particular proposals in each member's relevant areas. They're very happy to progress any proposal outside those that have already been identified by the open space. That 2.4 million slightly change, depending on what money's been held. Some of it might be committed. Some of it could be, as you know, it's quite prescriptive. When money is secured, is normally towards a specific project. But having said that, the open space team does do the evaluation, and if there is any changes within the remit of what was agreed, I'm sure they will do that. Caroline, the lifting, it is ring fence, the money for the lifting. And I will defer to Councillor Honeywood. I'm not aware that there's been huge increase into the uptake of the funding that's been allocated within Caroline. The cost of running Caroline are increasing ongoing, mainly because of resources, in fact, and so therefore there is that shows the 100,000 that could be potentially on that. I don't know if Paul, do you want to come in?
I can, yes. As you know, we are committed to Caroline. We don't have any intention of cutting back any of the services we offer. What we have done is made it more for local people, as you're aware. We are now concentrating on tendering residents and a service for tendering residents, and that's where we will continue.
Thanks, Paul. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, just to on the borrowing, it's kind of quite good opportunity to highlight that when our treasury activities will be finalised, we can expect a bit more positive performance from our investments. It's been completely decimated in the past few years. As I hinted back in October when I presented the position, then its borrowing costs have gone up, but likewise our team within the treasury management does some incredibly sterling work. I remember one year it was 300,000 achieved from some ridiculous fractions of 0.0 whatever percent. So therefore we can expect an increased return on our investment this year. And of course the business rate position, the collection that we've had this year, it's much more favourable in previous years. So therefore, and hopefully with the Freeport position, the business rate will continue to grow, which again should form very much part of our bulk funding to fund our services. But again, it's a lot of big question marks at the moment, and until we have a clear position, we won't know. So hopefully we'll know a bit more about a bit more substance this time next week when we'll get Christmas presents.
Terry.
Things the RSG, have they said what the amount will be? No, I'm just hoping that the parishes and the towns will get a little trickle down Christmas present, which would help us immensely. The other thing is how much does Thurrock owe us? We got this. Is there still an outstanding amount on that?
Yeah. Your home bonus last year was 1.8 million, if I remember rightly, and house building, the house delivery we've kind of returned this year, very much in line with what we had last year. So if there's not dramatic changes, without looking at the figures, I think we'll be more or less in line with what we had last year, Terry.
No, I think that wasn't. I was asking about sorry, I'll just ask you about how much does Thurrock still? Oh, Thurrock, yeah. Thurrock, sorry.
That's on to Richard, yeah.
Just clarify the situation with the money that's.
Yeah, as we said before, there's 3 individual loans. Sorry, Richard. Is it? No, it's not. There's 3 individual loans with maturity dates that they're coming up now. So we've got £6 million in total. That's going to come back in three lots in a very short term. We're talking next 2 or 3 months. It should. I think the last one comes back shortly.
And the other thing is, just for us really as councillors, is if we can do a bit more communication to the residents that when they get their tax bill, we only get less. We get less than 10% of it, because I'm telling you, I was singing this 30 years ago on this council, and people out there still think that we got the millions and millions that come in on the revenue there, and we need to also to issue the once again that was done at another time, the little crib sheets, little cards, yeah, and if you continue to do them. Because it's handy when you're getting slaughtered, when you're getting questioned on the door about, and this and everything. You can say, well, you should look at their house, you say, well, you've got a band D and your council tax is only a couple of quid a week type thing, to us. Phone up your county councillor and see where it all goes. And or the police. So they're the 3 things really, is the trickle down for the town councils and better communication out there, letting them know exactly what we get and what they get for the money they give us. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Terry. I think it's anecdotal belief out there that the district council, because we have the collecting authority, and we then just hand it over to the other parties. You know, we sit on all of it. You know, it's just over 7% of what we actually keep for ourselves. And you know, I think it'd be worthwhile, and I will work with Richard and Ben's revenue team to make sure that something is kind of included in the. You know, you normally get quite a lot of bumps in, you know, when you get your council tax bill, but to highlight the fact that Tendring District Council only keeps that 7% of the total amount. So if you're paying 200 quid, you know, it's a very small proportion of that. It's £14 is for the district council, the rest goes elsewhere. So I think we can work on putting a bit of communication on that to highlight just that. I totally agree with you.
As I say, make sure it's there, and just put district council this, and the sheriff, Essex County Council get the rest.
The suggestion about the little plastic laminated cards that we used to have, I've not seen them since last year. Well, in my previous time, and it was really handy. It's like, you know, where does my money go, as Terry says? And it's like, well, actually, here's a list. Oh, and people, it's the lack of knowledge and everything else. So I think, you know, that we always used to get that at the budget council. I'm sure we did. And it was sitting on the desk in front of you, and off you went. It was great. And there you go. Michael's got them from years gone by, shall we say?
Yeah, we all know Michael keeps copious notes. It's interesting. Well, I think the trouble is, Terry, you're absolutely spot on correct in what you say, but the problem is that for the vast majority of people, even including myself, and I should know what's going to be on that letter when it hits the map, but you open it and you see the bottom line and you think, how much? And you see Tendring District Council at the top, and everything else is just noise, isn't it? You're just... Well, yeah.
You're not sitting next to one.
I will move swiftly on. I don't disagree with you, but it's a difficult one. It was moved and seconded. I'll be happy to agree that. Thank you. That is agreed. The next item is item, where do we get up to? 13. Sorry, 11. I'm leaping ahead a bit too fast there. Sorry, item 11 is an update on spendles. Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, you have before you an update on where we are with spendles. As you can see in the report, the costs have risen considerably, which I don't think comes as a surprise to anyone. But I think the important thing is that we continue with the spendle site. I think long term, it's the right thing to do for a number of reasons, and I'll mention a couple. Firstly, when we're looking at homelessness and our need to, or our obligation to find housing for people that need it, the cost within the private sector is increasing all the time, and I don't see that changing at all. So I think having our own accommodation is the right thing. Our own accommodation that we manage is the right thing. And also that if our residents do find themselves in the unfortunate position of needing that kind of accommodation, it's on our doorstep, which means that people that are placed there have friends, relatives, and the local support network that they're familiar with. So I think they're the good reasons for putting it forward. So we're not in an ideal financial situation, but we're in a position where we can proceed with it, and I think it's the right thing to do. So I'd like to move that as written, Chairman.
I'm very happy to second that. And as Councillor Honeywood has hinted, spalling costs, you know, whatever you agree today might be completely different so in a few weeks' time. So the sooner we crack on with it, the better. And I think this goes along with the final decision will be presented to full council as it's highlighted in the page 160 when the funding has been completed. We hope to bring this at the February meeting the January meeting, we might have Honeycroft on it. Again, it's two very major development for the council is going to put forward. Unfortunately, the speed of which we can actually progress things, the framework that we got to work along, it's never been like the private sector that you issue a tender out and you start building next day, more or less. You know, nevertheless we're finally getting there, and so we'll have two major sites in our portfolio to be delivered in the very short future. So I'm very happy to second that.
Thank you. And I've got, please speak.
Christmas do.
Very nice too. Enjoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this Spindles, I mean, if I could go back, I remembered the excellent, not the excellent Tim, but Tim came and given an excellent presentation, or not presentation, an explanation of Spindles and what could happen, what can happen, what is happening to our homeless people, to our town council. It was during COVID when we were in different places and things like that. So it's 3 years ago this has been going on. And perhaps if we did it there, it'd still be 600k. But we are, as we say, where we are. I looked at the recommendation. The word otherwise, I don't really like that word in there because, but then who am I to change it? But the idea of this, and I don't know, and hopefully it's not going to change, was for short-term homeless. It's where we got evictions, and they're going to come full and fast next year, unless the government pull its finger out and put a stop to them. Where we got a mum with a couple of kids being stuck in a hotel room with a kettle and a fridge, with, you know, and that's where they have to stay. The idea that we did this, and Tim explained this, and we put it to him, is that the families could come there in that period between the suitcases on the pavement to when you find permanent, you know, accommodation, instead of putting them in hotel rooms. I hope it's not changed, and not really sort of single people that can go into hotel rooms, and which is more suited for a single person. If you can find a hotel room in this time we're in now. So hopefully that doesn't change. It's for that people with families, and it's for the short term until they get permanent. Because also the residents up there were really concerned about how it will be changed. Because people come down from the Home Office waving loads of wads and notes saying, oh, if you have some of these there, if you have some of them there, then you may be tempted. I hope we're not. This is for Tendring District Council homeless people that are in desperate need. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I will refer to Councillor Honeywood, but my understanding, my belief is for just that purpose. It's just to house people in dire situation, families that otherwise would end up in those awful examples that we see on TV, that end up in a hotel room with 2 or 3 children. But that is very much that for that purpose that I've been led to believe, and I'm sure that Councillor Honeywood will also confirm that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my view is strongly that we should look after our local people. We put local people first. They're the people who voted for us. They're the ones who put their trust in us. I think that it would be wrong for us to place outside the area rather than try and provide locally. I'm the first to shout at people and go to the media when other councils place people here. When they, in my view, they're neglecting their responsibilities. We should try and keep our people here. I think that it is a big commitment to do this, but it's the right thing to do. So I certainly wouldn't look as using it. I think maybe you're inferring that we may think of, you know, taking money for government to house various people there. No, that's not what it's about. It's about us looking after local people and providing the best we can for local people. As I say, we can't go around challenging other councils for placing out of area if we're doing it ourselves. We're looking to making every effort to put local people first in the accommodation. I think I've said that all through my housing. I've always been local housing for local people. That's not changed. I have no intention of changing that.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, it's not my ward, but I did speak to the ward councillor last night, and she's fully in support of the recommendation. I spoke to Councillor Mark Stevenson about this as well. We were just sort of astonished at the increase in cost. Obviously, it started off at 600,000. It's now double that. But let's get on with it. And I'm glad to hear, Carlo, about Honeycroft. Obviously, as I only live round the corner from it, as did yourself. And I welcome to see what's going to happen there. Thank you.
Yeah, just thanks for your comments. You're right, costs are rising. That's why we need to get on with it. But the other side of it is the cost on the council is also rising. As you've said, we're having more and more people present that need help. So we need to get on with it. You're absolutely right. The cost is higher, much higher than we anticipated, but it's the right thing to do. And we're fortunate in a position to be able to continue. So that's what we'll be doing.
Yeah. Chairman, very quickly, with regards to aspiring cost, if you remember, I think it was last year that we brought an urgent decision to full council to fund the works at the slippage on the seafront. The cost of steel doubled overnight, and if we had not agreed that decision then, they would have doubled again. And this was long before all this huge increase in inflations that we had. At the time when we made that decision, inflation was about 1-2%, you know, and this is the cost of building, you know, they change overnight. And you got Terry there, which probably buys electricity cable at £1 today, and he can sell it about £3 tomorrow or something, you know. And it's just a reflection of where we're in. But I just wanted to make. So you got 3 garages instead of 1 now. But it's just that, you know, we did that decision, urgent decisions from council, when inflation was only about 1-2%. You know, that's all right.
Chairman, my apologies. I have to leave.
Yeah, exactly. See you, Gary. Thanks for coming. Have a happy Christmas. Cheers. Next item is residential property, Dovercourt. Paul, is that yours?
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy to move that as written. Hopefully the paperwork is self-explanatory.
I think it is.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Chairman. We're just proposing to purchase the remaining 75% of the leasehold value of the place.
And we're actually amongst the constitutional changes that will be going to the next council meeting are proposals to increase the amounts, the limit for purchasing such properties, meaning that we won't have to come to Cabinet for relatively small transactions. I say relative in the context of buying a house. Obviously, if the council is having to sort of move on the open market by going to a Cabinet meeting and going through all that process, we're not going to be exactly fleet of foot. So I think everyone would agree that's a good thing to do, subject to obviously all the proper scrutinies and that. But anyway, it's moved and seconded. Are we happy to agree that? Yeah, thank you. There's a blue page item later on, which I'll move on block unless anyone wants to speak to it on that. The next item is on the updated housing revenue account business plan, which is Paul's.
Thank you, Chairman. I will speak into a small amount of detail on this because obviously it is around our council rents. As set out in the report, the 30-year business plan has been updated as part of the budget cycle for 2023-24. Unsurprisingly, the HRA is subject to many of the issues faced by the General Fund, such as inflation. In terms of the proposed rent increases for 23-24, following an earlier consultation, the government has set a maximum allowable increase of 7% rather than the usual CPI +1. In setting the minimum allowable increase, the government are seeking to balance the impact on tenants as well as the impact on the financial sustainability of local authorities' landlords' accounts. I have thought long and hard about the proposed rent increase for 23-24, especially with the government's intentions behind the cap firmly in my mind. With the local cost of living challenges faced by households across the district, the natural instinct was to see if the housing revenue account could accommodate a lower percentage increase. However, with the council's own costs going up by more than 7% across the various lines of the forecast, it would be an almost impossible task without putting the long-term sustainability of the HRA at risk. For example, every 1% less than the 7% increase proposed would reduce the spending power of the HRA by £3 million over the life of the plan. That would be £3 million that would otherwise be invested in tenants' homes. This highlights the telescopic effect of rent increases over the long term. As set out in the report, even with the proposed 7% increase in rents, the HRA is still in an estimated deficit position for 23-24. One of the options to meet the deficit would be to reduce expenditure, such as the money spent on maintaining tenants' homes. It is not proposed to take this route, but instead use money held within HRA reserves to balance the budget for 23-24. By taking this approach, the proposed budget for 23-24 enables us to invest over £7.6 million in the homes of our tenants during next year. Although we will be consulting with our tenants panel shortly, I understand that from earlier discussions with them that they appreciate the balance we are trying to find, which in turn supports the long-term financial future of the housing revenue account. In addition to the comments from the tenants panel, I also look forward to the comments of the Resources and Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, who will be considering this report at its January meeting. So with that, Chairman, I would like to move as written.
Chairman, this is a joint report, of course, between Councillor Underwood and I. I'm very happy to second that. And it just, Councillor Underwood talked about the telescopic effect of a 1% reduction. Let's not forget that we were forced to reduce our rents for 4 years, 1% compounded, and it equates into millions over the lifetime. But the pleasing thing is that to see that in 2015 we borrowed the best part of £39 million to buy our council housing stock. That's now reduced to 33.949%, and we've got 2 loans which have already been matured and a third one on the way. And again, that will give us more headroom to manoeuvre and to deliver that much needed housing to our people on the waiting list, who I've got to demonstrate that they've got links with tendering for the last 3 years. So that's important. And of course, when we talk about Honeycroft, full council in very shortly, I would not want to see us to borrow any money to develop that, because obviously the situation is at the moment. And we can only do that if we got an healthy HRA balance, which I'm very pleased that we currently have. But any reduction to our rents, Chairman, it's very, very derogatory.
Okay. The next item is the asset of community value, St John's Ambulance Hall, and I think Carla's going to speak to this on behalf of Linda, who's lost her voice somewhat.
She's lost her voice and she's can't see because she's got glasses with her. So I will be moving this, Chairman. I will declare an interest because it is the site happens to be in my ward, but I've got no real links with the town council are promoting the request of declaring it as an asset of community value. It is, you know, all the background papers are included in there. You will note that on the recommendation on page 92, we've added an extra point besides that, that the community asset be added to the council list of community value, but also that to request officers to look at the procedure for administering this, because invariably we get these in front of us on a regular basis, where really there should be something the officers should be able to deal with within their own delegated powers in consultation with a relevant portfolio holder. So I'm very happy to move the recommendation page 192, Chairman.
Yeah, I will second that. I was going to make. Apologies, I keep getting to my microphone. It's worth drawing everyone's attention to point 2 of the recommendation, which is not specific to Manningtree or this particular building. It's more to the general policy, which you just explained so well. I won't bother repeating it. Yeah, it is what it is. It's one of these assets of community value. It does meet the criteria, therefore we should grant it. Whether it happens, we'll see. But good luck to them. We're happy to take the vote on it. We're all agreed. Agreed. Terry, sorry, did you want to speak? Sorry.
No, that's I'm not in Manningtree, you know. It's I like the day when I could afford to live in Manningtree. I'll have to suffer the council house I've got in 4th Avenue, Frinton. But no, all seriousness, the actual ambulance station in Frinton has gone to our Heritage Society, and that's great, because it becomes now the museum, and everything's there, and it's good. We've got another one just opposite there that we would look to putting into that, and you did change it after an appeal to a asset, and hopefully they're getting on with that one. So I would support that. Sadly, I can't vote because.
Thanks for that, Terry. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We're happy to agree, including Terry. I've got the rest of the agenda. I've got the blue page item on the purchase of the property at Dovercourt. I'm going to move that on block.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Are we happy just to take that as printed? That's agreed. Okay, well, it just leaves me to wish everyone a very happy Christmas, prosperous New Year, and have a good time. And we'll see you all the other side of the